Well, then, without further ado, I'll pass the ball over to DFA Rice, who can tell you how your next iteration of your studio can be better than this one.
Cool. Let me share my screen. Can you guys see this?
Hmm.
Cool. All right, everyone see it? Okay. So yeah, Stephanie, you want to start?
Yeah, okay. So I don't know if any of y'all went to Summit this past summer, but these are basically kind of a reworked version of Maheen's presentation. So kind of talking about how we can see our studios as a meta prototype. That's why it says Leadership Summit, but this is not Leadership Summit. Okay, so for agenda, we already did introductions. We're first going to talk a little bit about DFA Rice as a case study for kind of seeing how you can prototype your studio. And then we're going to go over like an activity about how you can kind of make a user journey map for your own studio and see where pain points are and love points are for the members of your own studio. Yeah, okay, so kind of an interesting thing we observed was that like we just talked about all of us and like um, what our favorite experiences were from our studios, and each one of us had very different things to say and like different experiences. So something that we can kind of like take away from that is everyone in DFA is really different. We all come from different backgrounds, different majors, and it's important to think about how we can support everyone within our studios and within the community of DFA. Okay, cool. So some background about DFA Rice. So DFA Rice was established in 2013. We had some rigorous documentation practices. Tylon, would you mind moving I don't know if it's just mine, but there's like a screen. Oh, okay, that's just me. Sorry. Yeah, so we have a lot of documentation practices. We have a faculty mentor who's part of the engineering school, and he's high touch, meaning he's pretty involved. We have meetings with him once a week, maybe more if we need more support from him. Um, we also have repeatedly kind of gone over our own curriculum and how we teach the human-centered design process to try to like figure out the best way to teach it and also to have returning members feel engaged as well. Yeah, so we're going to be talking about DFA Rice as a meta prototype. Cool. So we kind of thought about like the steps that we took in order to kind of prototype on the studio and like what we go through. And so these are the steps. Basically, the first one is scope. So similar to how we can scope projects for like our DFA studio, you can kind of think about how we can scope for our own studios as well. So first we identify some goals that we want to work on, both short term, like for a semester, and then a yearly basis as well. I think that a lot of the feedback forums do this already for national when they ask like, oh, like what are things you guys are working on per week? And so this can be both like a weekly basis and like a yearly basis that you want to see change in your studio. And then empathize. So that one, pretty easy, just basically trying to think about the experience for members both who have been in the club for a while and people who might be new to both DFA and human-centered design. The third one is document. So everything that you do, if you change anything within your studio, if you try out a new sort of format for your open studios or like maybe recruitment, just having documentation is really helpful so that it can live on once the studio leads graduate. And then another step is plan. So just kind of going back to like how scope we identified these goals. In plan, we take these like big goals that we have, kind of break them down into actionable items, and then see how we can do that in a semester, in a week, in a year. And then consult. So consulting, so for DFA Rice, we have a faculty mentor, so that's really helpful because we can touch base with him. He has a lot of experience just with like management and like yeah, like he has a lot of cool like wisdom, so we can like talk to him to see if he thinks we're on the right track. You can also always talk to, I think, the national fellows as people to consult with. Cool. And so yeah, now we're going to talk about document, yeah, just how we basically have been as a studio. Cool. And so we're going to talk about our Open Studio agendas first as an example of how we've kind of iterated. And I think Tylon is going to go into our old Open Studio agenda.
Yeah, so I can sort of chat a little bit about how one sort of major area of sort of iterating was our Open Studio agenda, and sort of I can run you guys through where we were and now where we're going eventually. So back in 2007, sorry, 2017, a bit more recent, I had just joined GFA as a new member, and Open Studio had a sort of very interesting approach. So we had Open Studios for 2 hours on Saturdays from 1 to 3. And these would be divvied up basically 50-50 between a 1 hour studio-wide project and then a 1 hour of team time. And this studio-wide project was really sort of the focus at the time of the SLs. It was a project looking to redesign the dish drop areas in the serveries. So essentially, if you have cleaned up your food after eating in a dining hall, then you could go and drop it for it to be cleaned. And so we were looking about how to make that space more efficient for the users, which are Rice students. And so this project, the idea behind it was that people could sort of learn the design process through it, that we could do something together as a studio and really understand how the design process works by doing. And then afterwards, the idea was then you could do that portion. And once you had a better understanding of the design process, you could then do the 1 hour sort of team project work, which is sort of normally expected of GFA teams. And while this idea had a lot of sort of exciting thoughts behind it, the studio did not react super well to it. They felt like it was very demotivating and kind of felt very esoteric, not something that was super related to what was going on. It seemed that a lot of the studio members really cared about having a very structured and robust sort of like way of learning, but also making sure that way of learning connects to their own projects and not a project that they don't feel an attachment to. And so this was sort of a big insight that we drew from our users, in a sense that our users almost are the studio themselves. So with that, we almost kind of reframed around and tried something else. And then in 2018, we kind of revamped how Open Studio worked. So this time we still had sort of this 50-50 split with sort of 1 hour of team time, which people really valued, but we obviously needed to continue to teach the design process. So we then decided to have an hour-long sort of interactive workshop that could teach each step of the design process. And this would be a real mix between sort of lectures, activities, and a number of different things that would sort of engage the studio more actively, but also maybe make people feel like they're learning more and what they're doing is more relevant to their team. So we would have activities based around their projects. We would sometimes have activities also not based around their projects, but that were fun and sort of studio bonding type events. So I think the variety, as well as the fact that it felt like you were learning stuff that you could then apply elsewhere instead of working towards a goal that felt irrelevant to you, we felt like was good. But one of the biggest issues with this was the fact that many returning members who had already seen DFA curriculum time and time again were feeling very disillusioned with the fact that they had to keep seeing the same slides and the same content over and over again. This was something we really wanted to emphasize because while new members were enjoying it, we wanted to also ensure that our returning members really had the best experience possible. So with that, we actually took a look at a few more ideas that the studio told us and some feedback, and then Maida can sort of talk about what we're looking to implement next semester and in the future.
Yeah, so basically for 2019, we will be piloting this new Open Studio curriculum next semester. The breakdown is based off of this thing called that Maddie and I, who's another studio lead, have called the 30-30-30 plan. So there is going to be a 30-minute education portion just for new members at the beginning of studio that returning members don't have to show up for, but can if they want to. So this prevents new members who have seen the same slides of our DFA curriculum and have done the same supporting activities to each design step over and over again from not feeling bored, because they come half an hour later, where the entire studio then meets together. So the education portion takes place in a different classroom. We meet in the engineering design kitchen, which is like an engineering design space at Rice. So we'll have two classrooms as reserved, one for the education component for new members, and then all of us will then meet in the large classroom for normal Open Studio time. So that normal Open Studio time is going to be at least 30 minutes of team time, depending on the step. There are certain steps in the design process that we found through talking to members that teams want a little bit more time for, a little bit more time with the studio leads for, and then another half hour of an interactive workshop that can either be an entire studio-wide activity, it can be things about learning about how to use DFA in the professional world, how to make a portfolio. And so in this 30-30-30 method, we hope that returning members who don't have to sit through the design curriculum time and time again will feel more engaged. We found that this semester, while using the old curriculum, returning members didn't feel like they needed to show up to Open Studio on time because they were going to be going through an education component they had seen, 2 or 3 times before. We also hope that this will allow new members to have more connections with people outside of just their teams because you'll be in this DFA cohort where everybody is going through the education process together. So it'll allow these different connections to be made between members on different teams versus right now we've kind of found that people feel very close to their team, but maybe not as close to the studio as a whole. And basically our goals are that this is engaging for returning members and provides new members with a better set of friends as they go into studio.
Yeah, and kind of to add on to that, so we've been talking about like feedback, and I just want to mention that the way we've been getting feedback is like we have these like anonymous forms that we have people fill out at the end of our mid-semester review and our final review, and then also specifically for this like Open Studio restructuring, our most current one, we have something called like State of the Studio, which happens after our final review, and we had like had like pitched this idea, and we had like an open discussion with people who could just like give their feedback, and then we also had like an anonymous survey too, so that people could give their feedback as well.
So moving on, I think we also wanted to touch about how DFA Rice's leadership structure has gone through some changes over the past couple of years. So starting in 2017, when I started DFA, there was a 2-year pipeline with 2 senior studio lead mentors and then 2 junior studio leads in training. And being a studio lead was essentially like a 2-year commitment. You had to be brought on at your junior year, having team led at least one semester before that. And then from there, you would be in training for your first year and then a mentor to the new studio leads under you the next year. And then now, the way the leadership structure has kind of evolved is that there's one senior studio lead mentor, that's Maheen in the middle, and she kind of oversees all different studio tasks because she's gone through that 2-year pipeline. And then Stephanie and I are still the 2 junior studio leads in training. And we have 3 senior studio leads who are brought on later. And this is because while they might not have joined Design for America at the right time to match our prior pipeline, or maybe some of them had gone abroad, we wanted to make sure that people who were passionate about Design for America and the design process still had the opportunity to move up our leadership ladder when in the previous sort of system, they really weren't able to. The highest you could kind of go is be a team lead if you did start at the right time or to be team led a semester late. So this provides seniors and other upperclassmen who with opportunities that they would otherwise not have had.
Yeah, and sort of just to quickly talk about that, I'm someone who sort of is entering the system in a sort of a new way, given that I was sort of joined at a later date, and now I'm a senior. And again, I think a lot of this thought came in by sort of listening to the users or the studio. And that was especially true of myself and a couple other seniors who felt like they really wanted to get involved but didn't know how. And so Maheen especially, as well as Stephanie Maida, did a great job of sort of taking a look at what people were really wanting and then making sure that then there were changes built around it. And then it sort of allowed for robust people and a robust leadership structure where people who are excited could be involved, and it wasn't sort of limiting people. That sort of the ceiling was opened, that if you were really excited about it, it was something that you could continue doing.
And then final add on to that is that it's also been really helpful because now I think we've had a greater reach as well. It's been we've been able to do more things that we wouldn't have been able to do with only 4 studio leads otherwise. So for example, we mentioned Maddie was another studio lead. She's really excited about the alumni outreach, and so one of her passion projects this semester and continuing was thinking about how to get Rice alumni more involved, and she basically wanted to create a design workshop where people from the design industry who are Rice DFA alumni could come and give a talk to our studio, which was really exciting because I don't think we would have been able to do that otherwise. Cool. And then all of our materials from our slides, agendas, forums, all the things that we've been talking about and that we use as tools can be found at this link if y'all are curious. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so now we're gonna talk about we're gonna do like an activity. So next slide. You can go to the next slide. Yeah. Okay, so we talked about these steps, but we're gonna talk now about like empathizing and planning, and focusing on those steps with this activity. Okay, so I think Ross made a little like thing, a worksheet place where we can like kind of brainstorm this, but we wanted y'all to like imagine like a studio member in their first semester or a returning studio member in your own studio, and try to imagine like the steps that they go through, like how they learn human-centered design, or if they're a returning member, like what that experience is like if they're open studios, like when it occurs, and like what their like challenges would be versus like what they would really enjoy out of your own studio.
Yeah, so in the notes doc, each person that reserved a slot for this call has a little space where they can type out those. For the persona new member or a returning member, pick one, and then you can outline the pains, gains, and the actionable steps or any more embellishment of the process at your studio. So really get into the mind of that persona, and this will just be like a 10-minute quick just write down everything, don't really think about it too much, and then we'll have a discussion afterwards at like 5:40 Central Time. So in 10 minutes. But I think maybe like while people are talking, if they have questions about your presentation, would you like to answer, Rice? Okay, cool. Feel free if anyone has you. If anyone has any questions, go through it, but continue working on those personas.
Just to make sure people are still, can you still see the slides right now or no? You can? Yeah. Okay, great. I just wanted to pull up the notes doc.
I have a question about the exercise. For the gains, is that things that they potentially could gain or things that they are already gaining?
I think either works. But if you think about like their current gains first, and then think about like how to change or react to it, I think either way. But Rice, if you have any comments, feel free to correct me.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Rice, I have a question for you guys. What are some other areas that your studio, outside of leadership and like just the open studio meetings, have you guys iterated upon? And how did that go?
I think like maybe culture, like I think studio culture has been one that we're like interested in iterating on. I don't know. What do you guys think, Meta and like Tylon?
One big one that that sort of jumps to mind immediately is something that was maybe not as much iterated upon when I was sort of an SL or even a team lead, but something that was iterated upon as I was sort of getting into DFA was studio size. So we sort of kind of fluctuated in sort of the amount of people that we had. So DFA had sort of started out smaller, and then there was a desire from some of the older SLs to really grow. And so the semester I joined, we had a very open application process. We took everyone. We had a huge studio. We ran 8 projects with about 40 people. And while I think a lot of this was sort of very exciting, that we had so much going on and so many different individuals, I think that there were a lot of drawbacks. I think it impacts studio culture in that not everyone sort of has the ability to interact with each other. And then also I think it impacts the actual quality of the projects, because we're not necessarily, not all our projects were sort of perfect, and a lot of them necessarily didn't go to plan because I think we were spread very thin, and a lot of the SLs couldn't necessarily help all the projects achieve their full potential. And so I think having a really big studio, while exciting and was so cool about all that we could do, was sort of the sizing of just having 4 SLs and only so many team leads. I think it was really tough to make everything quality. So we sort of then pared back, and I think that's been very successful. Now we sort of run a studio around 25. I think maybe we've gone up to 30, maybe lower to 20, but right in that sweet spot I think is good, because we can run around 4 to 5 projects, have the team be really excited, and really give them a lot of that personal mentorship. And I think that was a really interesting sort of a pivot, and we tried something new. I realized it was kind of tough, and then sort of reverted back with new insights.
I think another place that DFA Rice has grown is in its education curriculum. So the studio leads prior to us made what we call the evergreen slides, which are a set of slides for each design step that teach the design curriculum, and those stay constant. They have like activities as well as just like normal things about each of the design steps that are pulled from like the national DFA like booklet. And so every single year we run an iteration of those slides with those core components based off of the evergreen slides. And every year we try to mix it up with things like new activities to keep returning members engaged. And then this year we've implemented case studies to show how each of the design steps can correlate or be applied to something in the real world. So like our previous case studies have included architecture charrettes, Airbnb. That's something that one of the studio leads, Maddie, had worked on this semester, because we found that there was a lack of people in the studio being able to see how these steps can be used in things like beyond their own projects.
Awesome. Cool. So we got about 3 more minutes to wrap up everybody's empathy brain dump here, and then we can talk a little bit more and share out about what current things are happening at your studio, what current things you are looking forward to, and a little insights into what you've learned through doing this activity. I mean, at the DFA National Office too, like everything is a prototype. We are constantly trying to learn the best ways to provide studio support for studios as they develop and they grow. And we're learning, Gloria and I especially are interested in making sure that we adapt to the changing network as it grows, as studio leads change, and we learn the best way and establish those relationships. So, for example, a project that I'm working on in the DFA National Office is, I talked about project registration, which is the census of the project. So just at the end of the semester currently, like what would that look like if those projects were, instead of just compiled at the end and then submitted, how can the act of documenting a project throughout the term be something that a DFA National person is able to facilitate and encourage for all teams, so that they constantly throughout the year are able to be conscious of and excited for all the documentation of their projects, so that they can share it out on their LinkedIn's, on their portfolios, so that they have an understanding of how to tell the story by collecting and stockpiling the documentation, so that they can curate and pare down rather than just kind of scramble everything together at the end. So that we have more quality projects from a DFA point of view for national, as well as the studios and the team members and the team leads that were really doing the project. So everything's a prototype, even DFA National. And with that,
can I ask you something? Oh,
sure.
Do we have time for another? Can I ask you another question?
Yeah. And then we can
About-
jump into the discussion.
I don't know if this is like a hard question for you to answer, but I was like curious on my own as I was thinking, like, as like the national network grows larger and like you all get like I think like right now we have like 40 studios, but like as you get more and more studios, like how do you imagine like your role as a fellow changing with like an expanding network? Sorry,
Yeah,
it's like a really hard question. Yeah.
No, it's exciting. Glory, do you have any other response too? I think I'll start. I think that Glory has about 7 slated for.
9 now.
We have 9 now. We have a 9 official. She just today walked in. She's like, we have another new interested studio. Very exciting. And I think like as more people are joining the DFA network, And growing into this family that we all know and love. From the national point of view, as a fellow, we have like some of the core studio systems like developed, and we're able to provide like update forms, and we have a system that no matter like how many there are studio leads have to submit this form, I think we have like a good understanding of like what we have to do on our end to make sure that we're understanding where you all are so we can provide the support. I think maybe there's a third fellow. There used to be three in the past, actually. So just with like realities of where we are, like if we have more people and grow as the DFA national office, we can continue to provide and have more intimate relationships with the studios. It used to be that like when there was like only 10 studios, like each fellow could talk to 5 like once a week and have one-on-one calls and really be involved. But as we've grown, we've kind of like had to become more of a satellite rather than a presence that we really want to be, and so we're learning and experimenting with how to do that. I think that yeah. Do you have anything you want to say something?
Yeah, I think. Oh, that was weird. It's like a microphone. I think as we grow to have more studios, like maybe in 5 years we'll have 100 studios across the country. Who knows? If we're gonna get like 10 new ones a year, I think it might. Our goal as fellows might be to really perfect what studio support means and what is the most effective way to manage all of you people at such a large scale, but also like how do we help you create the best projects that you can create to make better impact. On the other hand, DFA National as an organization, we would be growing our alumni group. Like right now we have almost 4,000. That's only going to grow over the years. And so we're also thinking about how do we continue being a presence in your life and in your career as you grow older and graduate and beyond that. So we're working out alumni programming and what that might look like too.
Yeah, if you have any other questions about what we are or recommendations or things you want to do when you're alumni with the DFA Network, like we're very interested, and now is a great opportunity to help shape that experience for many DFAs as they graduate. But anyway, thanks, Glory. This is the group call featuring Glory. Cool. So let's wrap it back in and like let's have a conversation. Stephanie, Rice, would you guys like to propose the questions and ask everybody about what they wrote about?
Yeah, I guess just like maybe introducing like your studio again and like kind of like maybe it'll come out in like how you answered the question, but I'm like really curious about like how like your studios are run, and so maybe like sharing out what you like the experiences that y'all wrote for like how a member either returning or new goes through your studio and like saying like, oh, like is it returning or is it new, and just like sharing that out, and then like how you guys chose to tackle that. Yeah. Does someone want to start?
Anyone? I'll just call a name. Bethany, you can start.
So I put I did a new member, and I put as the pain, I think one of the biggest pains or issues that new members had this semester was just the fact that they had trouble connecting where they were in their project to the lesson. Because we were just kind of going chronologically through the steps for lessons in the first half of our studio time, and then we would go into project meetings in the second half. But a lot of times, and specifically one project, wasn't really moving forward as quickly as we were with the lessons. So we also did kind of a survey at the end of the semester to kind of see what people liked and what they didn't. And a lot of people said that they just had a hard time seeing how the lessons connected to their project because they hadn't reached those steps yet in the project. And so they couldn't really grasp what each step meant because they weren't specifically doing it. And so I guess I didn't really know what to put for gains as it relates to that. So I kind of just put something that's not exactly sequitur. So I'll go to actionable steps next and just say some of the things that we brainstormed doing for that is working on a project, a studio-wide project in addition to the individual projects, just so that they can kind of see what the steps in the lesson are in relation to a project, and or doing design sprints more often, just to kind of give them a chance to see what each step is actionably. And then we've also talked about just trying to tailor, because we don't have that many projects. We have 3 projects running. Maybe tailoring our lessons to the projects instead of just going generally over each step. And then some of the gains I just said were being able to have access to the network of DFA, and also in the Nashville community. A lot of our people have just been able to meet people in Nashville that they wouldn't necessarily have been able to meet otherwise. So, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
and maybe
great.
we can take this time to like give feedback. Is that like, do we have time for that, or about like
We
ideas maybe?
Yeah, we have about like 10 more, 12 more minutes for this discussion, so whatever feels best for the participants here. Uh, I'd be interested in just having at least everyone give a chance to speak and then maybe collectively doing some feedback. Because maybe there's like a lot of similarities that will be shared and a lot of people answer other people's questions. So I'd be curious, Eleanor, do you want to talk about your experience?
Sure. So I think one of the pains that I put that we noticed in our studio this semester was a lot of our new members weren't participating a lot during our studio time. And so we're still trying to like figure out exactly why this was. Um, but I think like one of the things we thought about is that a lot of our new members were like design majors, but the like some of the design curriculum at Notre Dame uses different terminology than DFA. So one of our ideas I think would be to have like some more structured lessons that kind of talk about the different like DFA steps, but in a few different ways, so that if one way that we talk about it doesn't relate to someone, maybe like reframing the concept in a different way can help the person better understand. And then we also wanted to, like, sort of on that note, have our members like learn more about what DFA is beyond the project, because this semester we focused a lot just on like our community partner and what our project was. But I think by helping them like do some like maybe outside events outside of our normal meetings or like outside workshops, they will get a better understanding of like what DFA is.
Mm-hmm. And then do you want to speak to what your possible like actionable or next steps you want to do for the next iteration?
Yeah, so I think one of them to kind of get people like more comfortable participating would be to like at the beginning of the semester have like one-on-one lunches or coffee chats with the new members to kind of just get them comfortable like talking to the studio leads and the leadership team. And then hopefully at the meetings they'll have already like gotten to know the leadership team so they won't feel intimidated to participate. And then kind of going off what I was saying earlier, but to present the design concepts in a few different ways, so that if one way is confusing to someone, by presenting it in a few different ways, like they'll connect with one of them.
Awesome. And then DQ, or does anyone have, I mean, if anyone has anything to comment throughout too, feel free to do so. I don't want to monopolize anything, but DQ, I want to hear what you want to have to say.
So like our studio shares a lot of things with other studios, and for the new members, like they face this like a similar kind of problem. But then what I also put down something for the returning members, and I think that's something that I personally feel are very important as well. So we have returning members that wants to become leaders in the studio. So they want to be like team leads or like even beyond exec. But the thing is like it's very hard for them to know how they should manage a team without like past like team leads giving some sort of guidance to them. So we have this member, like she just became team leads, and she would often like approach us and ask a lot of questions regarding team management. So we realized, oh, maybe this is the same thing, this is the thing that's happening for all new team leads. So we went to ask them, and then we realized this is a common problem. So they are not sure about how they should handle a team when there's like members who are not so engaged, or whenever there's like a conflict between like members, or maybe there's like some sort of things going on with the community partner. And then another thing is like they might not be so confident with their own design skills, or like they may not be so confident about like mentoring new members. So they need someone to really like assure them that you have gone through the design process many times before, so you do have the knowledge. It's just like you need to try to use your knowledge and try to teach the new members along the way. So how I think some of the things that we can do is like one, have more sessions just for the team leads so that they can just talk to each other or talk to the exec members to learn more about how they should go about team management or like mentoring. Another thing is like we are trying to make documents or like just like document how exec or past team leads have been doing, have been approaching certain problems, so that future team leads can use that as a guide or like as a reference whenever they have certain like questions or problems. Yeah, and then another thing is like many returning members are upperclassmen, so they have less and less time for DFA, but they do want more guidance or like more a network to support them in terms of job search or like advancement in academia. So I think we should also like try to provide resources for them as well. Yeah.
No, thanks for sharing those insights and that experience. It's like that particular kind of resonates with me in the work that I was mentioning about what project documentation in like over the course of the semester could be for team leads in particular, and how DFA National can start to provide maybe some sort of aspect of this can allow team leads to feel like they are confident, or at least have like a manual of some sort, so some steps or best practices when entering the design process if they're new and things like that. Finally, Kira, do you want to tell us a little bit more, and then we can just finish up with some group comments?
Yeah, for sure. So I put this under new members. It's mainly just like a focus on the pain, but it's also something that we see for returning members and just like for like as a pain for our studio as a whole. Is that a lot of people are scared of going for leadership positions. Especially this semester, we have had elections where it's been one person applying for a role, and we still have a vote just because we do things reasonably democratically, and then or just like no one wants to fill the at this, and we're going to implement this one in the spring, and we're really excited about it, is having people shadow leadership, like team leads and like even the studio leads. So our structure, we have one studio lead, which is me, and then we have team leads for like media and marketing, members, outreach, treasury, culture, and events. So we're just gonna have people shadow those leads, and try to like destigmatize it and make it seem a little bit less scary, so people know what goes into holding these roles. Because I think that a lot of it is people are just really nervous because they see us meeting twice as much as they do, and then the leads are super involved when it comes to doing things like we hosted the Global Goals Jam, and we're gonna speak at South by Southwest. So all the prep for that has been really heavy on the leads. Part of that is just kind of trying to address other DFA really rests heavily on the shoulders of the leads, and we're trying to figure out ways to distribute that and then kind of just make people a little bit less scared once we have it less sorted out, because this is our second semester, so it's been a bit of a process, but we're excited to go forward with it.
No, it's very exciting. You're launching studio right out of the gates, doing a lot of stuff. Does anyone have any comments about any of anyone's feedback, or just stuff that's worked for you that might address something that someone said?
I think the one about like the mentoring, I think it was DK who said that. correct me if I'm wrong, like the something about like the teams not feeling like confident in their teams. Like we have these like weekly meetings where we like the studio leads, or like we have like one assigned studio lead who will like lead it and like have an open discussion, kind of like what you guys were saying in your actionable items, where like people can like kind of talk about what they're going through and like have everyone kind of give ideas or like feedback. And then like the studio leads are also like we kind of like this semester put like one studio lead per team as their kind of like team mom to help the team lead in case a team lead like needed anything. And that was like I think really helpful because then we could get like super detailed focus about like what's going on in this project specifically, and then like us as studio leads would like talk about like this is what's going on, like are there any fires that are like happening with a team that like we all need to like kind of like work on to see like what's going on in their team. And like I think that has been like really helpful, especially like when I was a team lead. Like I really relied on that because I wasn't confident as a first team lead, so having the ability to like talk to an SL about like what I've been going through was really helpful, and made me feel more confident as a team lead.
I think Kira had mentioned leadership positions and how to get people excited about running for leadership positions. I think at GFA Rice we kind of had a similar issue with people being very content or being less willing to step up, maybe either because of time or because they don't really know what the role expects. Something that we do is at the end of the semester, we ask our current team leads to tell us if there are any members on their teams who they think would be good team leads, and then studio leads either reach out personally or team leads will then convey that information to those members, and then that makes them more excited to apply. I think we found that this year, like a lot of members who have been in a team now are being like, a lot of team leads are saying, oh, like so and so would be a good team lead, like you should reach out to them next semester, or they will then personally reach out next semester. I think like I wouldn't have become a team lead if the studio leads hadn't like, if my team lead and the studio leads hadn't talked to me personally about it and kind of, one, assured me about the workload, and two, assured me of my own abilities.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like being able to nominate and recognize talent as you work with people and get them excited. Because people, I wish people believed in themselves more, but it's really fulfilling when someone recognizes you and like wants you to go up on that podium. Did someone, I feel like I cut someone off. Did someone about to say something?
No, I was about to just like respond to that. Yeah, no, I mean we have implemented doing that a little bit, and we want to try to do a nomination form, so it's not just up to studio leads, because we had about over 50% of our studio is like people didn't know me or another team lead. Has anyone had experience doing like a nomination form where anyone in the studio can nominate somebody for a position, or have you guys just done it with leads? Because we're wondering if that would be something that would be more successful for us.
I guess like what we did this semester was at like in the Slack nearing the end of the semester, we had just reached out to our team leads and we had said like, we also asked members at mid-semester review in that anonymous form whether or not they would be interested in being a team lead, a studio lead, or taking on any additional roles. So we kind of already by the end of the semester have an idea about who's interested, and we like plant that seed earlier. And then at the end of the semester, we had slacked all of our team leads and had asked if there was anybody on their teams who they like felt especially passionate about who would make a good studio lead, or a good team lead, and then we were moving from there.
Yeah. Also, kind of jumping in on that. So like,
Yeah, no, later. We definitely
oh,
want to
sorry.
try to get on people in the spring. Oh no, go ahead. Sorry, I think my thing's lagging, so I'm like cutting in the middle of people responding to me.
No, you're good. I'm sorry. Like, yeah, I didn't hear that. I was gonna say like one other thing too is like we would like during like our open studios we kind of like walk around and like try to notice like, oh, like who is like standing out as a person, like even if we don't know them personally, or like if you like, because we had like the team mom thing, we were like, I know like a couple of us have like done like coffee like one-on-ones with like everyone on like the team that we were like mentoring, and then like we got to know like the people on the team, and then we were like, oh, like this person seems like they have like really good leadership abilities, like maybe they'd be a good team leader, and just like reaching out and seeing like, oh, like we think you'd be good, like get excited. Yeah.
Yeah. I also wanted to bring up a thing that we did at the Crucier studio that's still going on. We had an anonymous forum, and then each open studio we announced DF Yays. So they were like anyone could submit anything or like a thank you and appreciation for either someone, a team member, a Steam lead, or something. Just like, hey, thanks for like going above and beyond to set up this like interview with this team lead, or like, oh my gosh, we did this cool workshop. Like, thanks for setting it up. And we had like little buttons and like we printed out a paper and it's like you, and then we set out like all the DFAs. So like in addition to leadership opportunities, just having like a culture of like appreciation and feedback and like allowing people to be recognized throughout that, and just like give many opportunities in addition to like being nominated for leadership, but just being recognized for the things that they were doing was something that I really cherished, and I got really excited when my team, when I was a team lead, like gave me one. I like, it's like, oh my god, I'm doing a cool thing, and you just have that feeling of being there. I if there's any more last minute questions, feel free to ask. I don't want to have anyone stay too long. It is 6:01 Central Time. I just want to give this time to ask everyone to scroll down to the bottom of the worksheet. There's an I like, I wish, I wonder, because in order for us to better make group calls and prototype them next semester, we need to know what you liked about it, what you wish was different, and what you wonder could be. So please give us feedback so we can practice what we preach. But if there's any other questions, like as you're filling it out, please do so. But if there aren't any, thank you so much for taking the time to call. Thank you to DFA Rice, to Stephanie and Meha and Tylan for taking the time to put this presentation together for us. And I'm looking forward to seeing you all in the new decade and all the amazing design impact that you'll do in 2020 and beyond.